The ocean doesn't just move, it keeps time. Welcome to Snoozy Science. From tides that breathe with the moon to waves that whisper the passing hours. Tonight, we drift into the sea's quiet clockwork. The sea does not need a watch to tell time. You lie still, and in your mind, drift backward, far beyond your own heartbeat, beyond cities and ships, beyond stories and songs. The sky is different here, younger, quieter. There are no stars yet, only a vast dark dome breathing above you. Beneath, the earth is cooling, its crust still restless, exhaling steam and forming continents that do not yet have names. And there, filling the low places, is water. Water, endlessly wandering, as if the planet itself weeps gently into its own hands. Pools become puddles, puddles stretch into lakes, and lakes spill into vast, salty basins. The oceans are born not with thunder, but with silence, a silence that ripples. You float now in that ancient hush. The first sea cradles you like a memory it hasn't formed yet, and though there are no clocks, something already moves in rhythm. The water draws back, and comes again. You don't know the word for tide yet, no one does, but you feel its tug in your chest. The earth has a partner now. A pale, round satellite caught in its gravity, always watching. The moon. Not close enough to touch, but close enough to pull. With every quiet rotation, the moon leans into the oceans, and the oceans lean back. A subtle stretching, a slow release, a cosmic breath, in, out, in again. This is the sea's first tick. Time before numbers, a tempo written in water. It is not exact, not mechanical, but it is steady. Over hours, the sea rises toward unfamiliar shores. Over hours more, it retreats. Every 12 or so hours, it begins again. A pulling, a loosening. The oceans follow the moon, and in doing so, they create a kind of heartbeat for the earth. And where there is rhythm, life listens. You picture the sea's earliest edges, strange, warm shallows curled around black volcanic stone. Here, the tides swish in and out like a cradle being rocked, pools collecting crevices. As the water recedes, it leaves behind little trapped universes, pockets where molecules swirl and cling. Time, here, is not marked with a bell, but with possibility. With each returning tide, new elements mingle. Carbon meets hydrogen. Molecules build like children stacking pebbles. Sometimes they fall apart. Sometimes they hold. The water shifts, withdraws, returns. Again, again. Each visit a quiet experiment. And then, eventually, softly, something stays. Perhaps a strand curls into a loop. Perhaps it splits and finds a way to repeat. Perhaps for the very first time, something copies itself. And the sea keeps time for it. Long before the sun ruled over days, long before trees measured seasons in rings, the oceans were already moving to a schedule. A pattern set not by clocks, but by gravity's invisible dance. The moon whispers, and the waters bow. The earth, in turn, starts to remember. You drift over that slow, ancient sea, and listen. You hear no ticking, but you feel the count. Low tide, high tide, low again. A rhythm softer than any song. A rhythm written into the bones of every creature that would one day rise from the sea. Even now, inside your body, salt flows. Your blood echoes the ocean's chemistry. Your cells, long removed from that primeval shore, still hum with tides. Your brain quietly ticks. Your lungs rise and fall in rhythm. In, outside, in again. Breathing is not so different from tide. Rest, return, release, renewal. The sea knew this before you, and so time begins not with a machine, but with a motion. Not with a number, but with a pull. The moon pulls on the sea, and the sea pulls on the earth, and life, still small, still silent, begins to stir in the margins of their meeting. Over eons, the tide's timing would guide the first migrations. Tiny creatures would wait for the pull of water to venture safely from one tide pool to another. Later, the moon's gentle insistence would shape spawning, feeding, resting. Some of the oldest marine animals still rise and fall with the tide as though it were breath. And then, much later, humans would watch too. Fishermen waiting for the waves to retreat. Sailors reading the ocean's language before casting off. Builders carving calendars into stone, trying to measure what the moon already knows. All of it, from ancient tides to modern watches, begins here, with the sea's first tick. You lie back, letting the rhythm hold you. A wave rises, a wave falls, a memory forming, a breath, no rush. Time is not something to chase tonight. It is something to feel. You are a part of this great rhythm, the gentle sway between gravity and water, between silence and motion. And though the oceans have changed, deepened, split, warmed, stormed, they still remember their oldest task. Even now, beneath ships and sonar, beneath coral and current, the ocean keeps time, quietly, reliably, a slow, patient pulse that connects the moon to the earth, and the earth to you. You listen, you feel the rhythm press softly against your thoughts, and you wonder, if the sea could dream, what would it dream of next? You lie beneath the sky and look up. There it is, the moon, poised like a pearl in velvet shadow. Soft light spills across your face. You don't need to reach for it. You already feel it, not on your skin, but somewhere deeper, as if the moon's presence hums in your ribs, in your chest, in the deep sea of your mind. The moon does not shout. It does not flash or burn. It does not demand. It pulls. And somehow, that gentle, distant pull moves whole oceans. You let your thoughts rise like mist. Above you, the moon circles the earth, slowly, patiently. It moves, not in haste, but in rhythm, the kind of rhythm that keeps time without counting it. And while it whispers to the sea. The moon's pull is gravity, invisible, silent, constant. It stretches the Earth's oceans outward, toward itself, and at the same time, away from itself, a strange, balanced dance. The result is tide, not just a rise, not just a fall, but a sway. A breath across the surface of the world. High tide forms where the moon's gravity pulls hardest. But on the opposite side of the Earth, the water also lifts, drawn outward by inertia, by the Earth's spin, by the graceful momentum of movement. It's as if the oceans bloom on both sides, curving into two soft swells that chase the moon around the globe. And the Earth, solid and slow, turns beneath them. Wherever you are on the planet, these tides arrive, not with spectacle, but with certainty. They arrive to greet shorelines, to kiss salt into the air, to remind coral reefs when to feed, to cue horseshoe crabs when to mate, to urge sea turtles when to crawl toward nesting sand. This is gravity's lullaby, the moon humming to the oceans rocking the earth. You breathe with it, in, outside. The tide is not foreign to you. Inside your veins, water flows. Inside your cells, salt sings. Inside your body, rhythms echo those early lessons written in waves. Even your sleep listens to the moon. Some creatures sleep by its light, some by its darkness. Some bloom when it is full, others when it disappears. Certain fish spawn only when the moon is right, as though it speaks a language more ancient than instinct. And you too are guided by its presence, though you may not notice. Farmers once planted by moonlight. Sailors timed their harbours to it. And the word month, it is a shadow of moon, a measure shaped by its round face, its slow retreat, its endless return. You watch now as clouds drift across its surface. The moon seems to float, weightless. But it is anything but light. It is heavy enough to hold the earth in rhythm. It is massive enough to move oceans. It is powerful enough to slow time. Yes, even time listens to the moon. Because the moon pulls not only water, but also motion. As the moon tugs the oceans into bulges, Earth rotates beneath them. This friction, this small drag repeated over billions of years, has slowed our planet's spin. Once, a day on Earth lasted only 6 hours, but the tides, pulled by the moon and resisting the turn, slowed the planet's pace. Now we move slower. Now a day lasts 24 hours. You feel that stretch in your bones. Gravity doesn't need to rush. It works through repetition, persistence, patience. It shapes not with thunder, but with presence. And that presence, gentle, tireless, molds everything. The moon holds the Earth steady too. Without it, our planet would wobble wildly, tipping its axis back and forth, sending seasons into chaos. But the moon steadies us like a companion walking beside, hand on your shoulder, keeping your steps aligned. You let that image rest in your thoughts, the moon as a quiet companion. There is something comforting in knowing it is always there. No matter where you sleep, the moon rises. No matter what language you speak, its face is the same. No matter how many years pass, it returns to fullness, then fades, then returns again. You may feel small beneath it, but not forgotten. The moon does not watch, it embraces. Its gravity wraps the planet like a slow lullaby, not sung with notes, but with tides and turns. A song with no beginning, no end, only cycles, waxing, waning, pulling, letting go. The sea rises and falls, not because it chooses to, but because it listens. And you listen too. You remember standing on a beach as a child, the sand soft and cold, the sea inching closer to your toes, each wave like a whisper from far away. The tide moved in, slow but sure, not caring whether you noticed. But you did. You always noticed. The moon does not demand attention, it earns it. Even now, as satellites orbit and telescopes peer deep into the universe, the moon remains your closest neighbor. Familiar, but mysterious. Present, but unreachable. You could fit hundreds of thousands of moons between the Earth and the Sun, but none would matter like this one, because this one knows your tides. This one shapes your nights. This one slows your days, steadies your Earth, and pulls at your oceans until they sigh. This one reminds you that time isn't always counted. Sometimes it's simply felt, in the quiet, in the pull, in the rise and return of things. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you imagine what the moon might feel, if it could feel. Perhaps it senses the weight of water reaching up to meet it. Perhaps it feels the soft ache of being followed. Perhaps, in its ancient silence, it knows it is needed. Not because it burns bright, but because it moves gently. And maybe that's enough. You breathe in again. The ocean swells beneath the moon. Not in chaos, not in haste, but in reverence. A slow bow of water. A hush that loops through time. A motion that never forgets where it came from. As you float in this thought, something else stirs inside you. Not a wave, not a pull, but a question. If the moon moves oceans with its touchless grace, what might the sun do with its fire? You walk now along a pale, sleeping shore. The sky is hushed, and the tide has just begun to pull away. Moonlight paints the damp sand silver. There is no ticking, no chiming, but the world here is full of clocks. Not the kind you wear or wind. These clocks are woven into shells, into instincts, into limbs that scuttle sideways and hearts that know the sea. Here time is not measured in hours or days, but in the rhythm of salt water. You kneel beside a tide pool, its surface still and glassy. Beneath, small lives stir. Barnacles wave feathery arms in the hush between waves. A limpet grips the stone like a secret. And then, a flicker, a sideways dash. A crab, no, larger than your thumb, rushes from one crevice to another. She is keeping time. The sand crab, the ghost crab, the fiddler. Each of them listens to the tide in a way humans never quite can. They don't guess. They don't check. Their bodies remember. A tide rhythm, roughly 12.4 hours long, hums inside them, beating not like a drum, but like a soft echo. Twice each day, the ocean returns to cover this shore, and twice it pulls away. For the crabs, this means everything. The moment the water recedes, they rise from burrows, from rock shadows, from the damp beds of seaweed, to eat, to court, to live. When the tide begins its return, they vanish again, tucked safely out of reach. You imagine setting a clock to this, one wound not with gears, but with gravity. The moon pulls, and the tide follows. The tide follows, and the creatures respond, like a grand, slow ballet cued by a light you cannot hear. Yet every creature here knows the choreography. And there, you see it now. A cluster of mussels clings to a rock, their blue-black shells barely glinting in the dark. At low tide, they remain closed, safe, sealed, patient. But when the sea returns, and with it the moonlight drifting through the waves, they open like cautious petals. Not to bloom, but to feed. Their gills filter the water. They wait for plankton, for particles, for what the ocean brings. And when the tide slips away again, they close with it, as if obeying a curfew whispered by the sea itself. Even when removed from their habitat, mussels and oysters continue to open and close in rhythm with the tides, as if their bodies still remember the moon's pull, as if they carry a memory of the ocean inside them. You pause. You wonder, what does it mean to carry a memory that isn't yours? These creatures are older than stories. Long before humans carved calendars or named constellations, the tide had its keepers. Horseshoe crabs, for instance, strange and ancient, their bodies unchanged for hundreds of millions of years, still rise in perfect synchrony with the tides. During the full and new moons of spring, they crawl ashore by the thousands to mate and lay eggs in the wet sand. How do they know when? How do they time their arrival with the rising tide? They listen, not with ears, but with evolution. Their internal clocks are attuned to the lunar cycle, to the gravitational dance between moon and earth. They move not because someone tells them to, but because they are part of the rhythm. Even in darkness, even when the sky is hidden, they know, and they are not alone. Many marine animals possess these internal tidal clocks, biological rhythms known as circadian cycles. Just as humans have circadian rhythms that follow the sun's 24-hour light-dark cycle, these ocean dwellers follow the 12.4-hour ebb and flow of the tide. You picture it like a second heart, not for blood, but for timing. Fish that dart between rocks, worms that surface to mate, sea, stars that crawl toward feeding grounds. All of them obey the sea's invisible watch. And some creatures even hold two clocks at once, one for the tide, one for the sun, coordinating them like a duet. What you think of as day is not the only way to mark time. There are calendars in the sand. There are diaries written in the mudflats, where birds peck precisely when the tide retreats, exposing breakfast. There are clocks in kelp forests that lean one way at high tide and another at low. There are lullabies sung by wave and moon and mussel. You begin to see that time, here, is not a number. It's a behavior, a rhythm performed, a crab that waits to emerge, a shell that knows when to close, a fish that spawns only when the water says yes. You look up again at the moon, steady, constant, and then down to the shore, where all these quiet lives have made peace with a world that shifts. They do not resist the tide. They trust it. And maybe there's something in that trust, in yielding to a greater rhythm. You breathe with the thought, not all clocks tick. Not all time moves forward in straight lines. Some of it circles, repeats, folds back on itself like waves. Some of it is felt in the soles of your feet as the water touches and leaves again. Some of it is known without knowing. You sit on the sand now, watching as the tide returns. Slowly, softly. It begins as a shimmer on the edge of shadow, then spreads, swallowing footprints, smoothing dunes, reaching again for the rocks and the creatures waiting there. A crab emerges. A mussel opens. The calendar begins again. And you too are part of this. Your body may follow the sun, your days set by digital faces and alarm clocks, but some part of you, the part made of water, the part made of salt, still remembers this deeper rhythm, still listens for it, still longs to move with it. And as the tide lifts the shore once more, a thought comes like a gentle whisper. If the moon shapes the rhythm of the sea, what of the sun, the one that gives it light and warmth and the spark of life itself? You are floating, not just on water, but on something older, something deeper. The swell beneath you rises, then falls, and your body moves without thought. The sea holds you, like breath held just a little longer, like a pause between heartbeats. This is not just motion. This is memory. Each wave that passes under you began somewhere else. Perhaps it was born in a storm half a world away, stirred into being by wind pressing its palm against the ocean's face. Or perhaps it began gently, where warm air brushed a sunlit surface. Barely a whisper, but enough to ripple. And then it travelled. Waves do not stay where they are made. They move, carrying with them the shape of the moment that formed them. A storm's anger, a breeze's sigh, the gravity of a falling glacier, the heartbeat of a distant earthquake. All of it becomes pattern, becomes motion, becomes rhythm on the surface of the sea. You drift in that rhythm now. The water beneath you is not just wet, it is layered with stories. Some come fast, small and skipping like thoughts at the surface of sleep. Others come slow and wide, like old memories returning from far away. These are the swells, waves born far from here, gliding beneath the skin of the sea. Unlike choppy, chaotic surface waves, these swells are organized, smooth, long. They travel for days, even weeks, crossing entire oceans, their shape unchanged, their origin still humming within. They are memory, made visible. You listen, not with ears, but with your whole self. Each wave presses into your skin with a gentle nudge, a suggestion. You can't see where it began, but your body knows it came from somewhere before this moment, and somewhere before that. The ocean remembers in circles. You feel it in the currents too, not the surface dance, but the slow, powerful rivers within the sea itself. Beneath the waves, water flows in ribbons that never stop. The Gulf Stream, the Kuroshio, the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, they all wind around the globe, connecting continents like veins, like timelines. These currents are shaped by wind, by salt, by heat. They move warm water to cold places and cold water to the equator. They rise from the deep, bringing nutrients. They sink again, pulling oxygen down where light never reaches. This is called the global conveyor belt, and it moves like breath across millennia. A full cycle may take 1,000 years, and yet it continues, steady, patient, ancient, as if the sea is exhaling a story so long, no one lifetime could hold it. But still, it's told, over and over, a memory passed from molecule to molecule. Even the salt tells a tale. Every drop of ocean holds trace amounts of sodium, chloride, magnesium, calcium, and more. Elements that once came from rock, from rain, from rivers. Over time, they dissolved into the sea, where they remain, shifting slightly, recording change. The sea's saltiness is not just a flavor, it's a fingerprint. It reveals the history of Earth's climate, of volcanic birth, of glacier melt, of dust carried on desert winds. You dip your fingers into the water. That's salt. It is the same salt your ancestors tasted, the same that moved through the gills of trilobites, the same that floated ammonites and trilobites and tiny swimming things whose names are lost, but whose forms shaped all that came after. The sea is a library, not with books, but with waves. And like any library, it is quiet, but not silent. Waves break and speak in foam. Tides breathe in and out across shores. Deep currents carry cold memories from the poles to the equator and back again. The ocean does not forget. It remembers in motion, in pattern, in temperature and salt and sound. You float now through that remembering, and you begin to feel it, the way the sea carries time not as a line, but as a loop. Not forward, but around, again and again. The tide returns, the current circles, the wave crests and falls, and then crests again. Time here is not counted, it is kept, in gyres, in spirals, in the way a dolphin rides a wave made by a ship made by a hand built from an ancestor who once, long ago, watched the sea and understood, even without words, that something eternal moved there. That same understanding moves through you now. You close your eyes, and your breath finds the rhythm of the waves. You do not control it. You do not need to. Your body sways, and it is enough. Somewhere below you, a whale sings. Its song echoes for miles, repeating notes in long, low waves. Sound travels differently in water, slower, deeper, more enduring. A single call can carry across an ocean trench, and in that call there is history. Some whales sing in dialects, inherited from generations past. Some repeat the same patterns year after year, adjusting ever so slightly. Their songs, too, are memory. In some places, scientists drop microphones to the ocean floor and listen. What they hear is astonishing. Not silence, but story. The scraping of icebergs, the groaning of shifting tectonic plates, the chorus of shrimp snapping tiny claws, the hum of passing ships, the pulsing clicks of squid, the whisper of water folding into itself. The ocean remembers everything, not in words, but in wave. And so, you drift, body held by memory, mind soothed by motion. You are not apart from this remembering. You are part of it. Your cells carry salt. Your ears know how to listen for rhythm. Your own heartbeat once synchronized with the sway of amniotic fluid. Another sea. Before you learned to walk, you learned to float. Before you spoke, you listened. Before you measured time, you felt it. And here, in the sea's arms, you feel it again. A wave presses beneath you. You rise, another follows. You fall, you sway, again, again. Each wave a breath, a sentence, a circle written by the sea's unseen hand. And as the tide begins to shift once more, a soft thought curls at the edges of your awareness. If waves can remember without words, then what else might the earth be holding in silence? You begin to sink, not in fear, not in haste, but in trust, in stillness. The surface slips above you like a memory. Light softens, then fades. You are descending into the deep, where sunlight does not reach and time does not hurry. It is quiet here, but not empty. You feel pressure begin to build, gentle, then firm, then insistent. Every meter you descend, the ocean presses inward, as if wrapping you in deeper and deeper layers of thought. At just a few hundred feet, the blues darken into ink. At 1,000, the world becomes velvet black. And still, life waits. The deep ocean is a place where time stretches out like a long, slow breath. Here, nothing rushes. Light is a stranger. Change comes gradually, like a whisper you don't quite catch the first time. And life adapts. You drift through the mesopelagic zone, the twilight zone. Faint glimmers of light still dance here, but they don't come from the sun. They come from the bodies of creatures that have learned to glow. Bioluminescence. Tiny sparks in the dark. A drifting jellyfish pulses with soft violet. A comb jelly flickers green and gold. Lanternfish flash in sequences like coded language. These are not fireworks. They are survival, communication, camouflage. You pass through the dark like a thought between dreams. Below you lies the bathypelagic zone, the midnight zone. It begins nearly a mile down. Here, sunlight has vanished completely. The temperature drops. The pressure grows immense. Yet even now, the ocean is not lifeless. Giant squid drift like curtains in the current. Transparent creatures twist slowly past, their movements deliberate, almost reverent. A gulper eel opens a wide mouth into the unknown. They do not scurry, they do not flinch, they wait. In the deep, life is not frantic, it is patient. Energy is scarce, so nothing is wasted. Metabolism's slow, reproduction spans decades. Some fish lay eggs that may not hatch for months. Some coral colonies grow just a few millimeters a year. So slowly you'd need generations to notice. Down here, growth is measured in quiet. In these depths, the Greenland shark swims. You cannot see it now, but it is here, somewhere, ancient and calm. It moves slowly, almost dreamlike, through the cold waters of the North Atlantic. One was found to be nearly 400 years old. Born in the early 1600s, still alive today. A creature older than Mozart's music, older than telescopes, older than the idea of seconds and minutes. It has seen no sunlight. It has never needed to. Time does not pass here the way it does above. It drifts. It curls. It pauses. Even death moves differently in the deep. When a whale dies and its body sinks, what scientists call a whale fall, it becomes a kind of underwater galaxy. First, the soft flesh is eaten by scavengers, hagfish, sleeper sharks, amphipods. Then come bone-eating worms, who dissolve the skeleton slowly, patiently. A whale fall can support life for over 100 years. One death becomes 100 lifetimes. You feel that slowness now in your own breath. It's not just delay, it's depth. And within this slowness, the ocean keeps secrets. Strange creatures have been found here that defy classification. A ghostly octopus that lays its eggs on thermal vents. A sponge the size of a minivan. A fish with a translucent head and upward-facing eyes that stare through its own skull. These beings have been shaped not by urgency, but by pressure, darkness, time. You are still descending. Now you pass through the abyssopelagic zone, the abyss. It stretches from 4,000 meters down to 6,000, a world few humans have ever seen. The temperature here stays just above freezing. The water is still, motionless. It feels like the bottom of thought. And then, even below that, the Hadal zone begins, named after Hades. These are the deepest trenches, the cracks in Earth's surface, the Mariana Trench, the Tonga Trench, places where pressure becomes crushing. And yet still, life flickers. Tiny amphipods drift here. Bacteria feast on chemicals that seep from the Earth's crust. Some fish, translucent and boneless, swim slowly as if made of water itself. Their world has no sunrise, no tides, no weather. But it has time. So much time. Down here, sediment collects slowly, like dust in a forgotten attic. A single centimeter might take 1,000 years to form. And within that layer, fossils, minerals, memory. The deep sea floor holds a diary of the planet. Climate shifts, volcanic ash, meteor dust, the drift of continents. Not written in ink, but in layers. The deep is not empty. It is full of stories told so slowly. We must learn to listen differently. And when we finally did, when we sent machines down into the Hadal trenches, they brought back not silence, but wonder, and also warning. Microplastics, even here. Chemical traces, even here. The ocean's memory holds not only Earth's ancient past, but our presence too. Our footprints, etched invisibly into the slowest corners of time. You float in that awareness now, not with guilt, but with gravity. What we send into the sea, noise, warmth, fragments, it does not vanish. It travels, it settles, it waits, just like the whale bones, just like the songs of ancient fish, just like the drift of cold currents holding the shape of the ice ages. The deep teaches you this: time is not always urgent. Some things take centuries. Some things take stillness. Growth can be invisible for years and then bloom all at once. Memory can lie dormant in sediment, waiting to be read. And life, in all its strange, glowing, skeletal forms, continues, even when we cannot see it. You are rising now, not fast, not slow, just steady. You carry with you the rhythm of the deep, the sense that beneath every moment is a quiet echo, a soft depth, a patience the surface has forgotten. As you return to the world of light and movement, one question follows you gently, like a current rising from below. If the deep moves so slowly, what does the sun do? Where time is fastest, and light never rests. You drift now, not downward, but sideways, carried, not by wind, not by wave, but by something deeper. A steady, silent motion beneath the surface. You're no longer floating aimlessly. You're part of a current, a river within the sea, wide as a continent and slow as breath in sleep. This is the unseen motion of the ocean. This is how the planet circulates itself. Warm water surrounds you. It began near the equator, bathed in sunlight, gathering heat like a memory. Now it moves, not quickly, but constantly, pressed forward by winds and the turning of the earth. It follows the edges of continents, curling into loops, spiraling across oceans, always seeking somewhere cooler. You're riding the Gulf Stream now, a powerful current that flows from the Gulf of Mexico up the eastern coast of North America, then eastward toward Europe. It moves like a ribbon of warmth, connecting faraway places. Not just with water, but with weather, with life, with time. Currents like this one are not random. They are part of a vast pattern known as the global ocean conveyor belt, or thermohaline circulation, a system driven by two quiet forces, heat and salt. You feel them both now. Warm water, full of sunlight, is less dense. It floats near the surface, moving quickly, sweeping nutrients and fish and floating plankton along its path. But as it travels north, the air cools. The water loses heat, and in the cold, it becomes heavier, especially near the poles, where sea ice forms. As ice forms, it leaves salt behind, making the surrounding water saltier and denser still. At a certain point, this cold, salty water becomes heavy enough to sink, and when it does, it plunges. Not like a waterfall, but like a slow, silent descent. A drift into the depths that begins a journey lasting hundreds of years. You are watching this now, from inside the idea of it. The water that sinks in the North Atlantic will eventually flow along the ocean floor, past the equator, down around the southern tip of Africa, across the vast Pacific, and then, centuries later, begin to rise again, warmed once more by sunlight, and pulled into a new loop. It is a journey that never ends. You picture it like breath. Warm water rises, cold water sinks. A slow inhale and exhale that circles the globe over and over again. This system connects every ocean, the Atlantic, the Pacific, the Indian, the Southern, the Arctic, not as separate bodies, but as one vast, flowing lung. It moves more water than all the world's rivers combined. And more than water, it moves memory. You drift along this thought. These currents regulate climate. They warm some coasts, cool others. They carry oxygen into the deep. They bring nutrients up from the bottom. They shape the migrations of whales, the patterns of fish, the timing of blooms. They are the sea's circulatory system. And like blood, if they slow, everything changes. Already, in some places, the currents are shifting. Glaciers melt faster. Salinity changes. Water warms. The engine falters. Scientists watch this closely, not with fear, but with reverence, because these flows are not just about sea temperature. They are about time. This circulation remembers ice ages. It remembers volcanic winters. It remembers ancient carbon and dust and life. You think now of something small, a drop of water lifted into a cloud, falling as rain in the Arctic, freezing into snow, melting, entering the sea. That single drop may take 1,000 years to return to the surface on the other side of the world, but it will return. You are moving with it. Above, ships may cross and storms may churn. But far below, this motion continues, unaffected, enduring. Deep water from the Pacific may not see the light of day again for centuries. It waits, it flows, it remembers. This is not the rush of a wave. This is the patience of a planet. Even when it appears still, the ocean is always reaching forward, pulling warmth north, carrying cold south, wrapping around continents like invisible threads. If you could see them traced in light, they would spiral like galaxies, gentle, constant spirals that stitch together Earth's past and future. You feel it in your chest, a hum, a pull. You're no longer drifting aimlessly. You're part of something vast, something that moves through centuries without pause, something that connects equator to pole, sunrise to moonrise, breath to breath. As the current carries you forward, you begin to wonder. If water can flow around the Earth for 1,000 years, what happens to the sunlight it once held? Where does that warmth go? And what does the sun keep circling to? You settle now on the ocean floor. It is darker here than night, quieter than memory. The surface feels impossibly far away. A distant shimmer you no longer miss. The world above moves with light, with seasons, with urgency. But here, below the sunlit churn, time slows until it thickens, until it begins to settle into layers. And in those layers, stories wait. Beneath your resting place, the seafloor holds more than silt and sand. It holds the bones of time. Not just bones, but shells, scales, teeth, and tiny fragments of things that once lived, once moved, once shimmered in the upper currents. Each fell quietly, a single cell, a flake of shell, and joined the others on this slow descent. Down here, nothing is in a hurry. You reach out. Beneath your hand is a chalky softness, the compressed remains of millions of years. These are the skeletons of foraminifera and coccolithophores, microscopic beings with delicate shells, drifting near the surface long ago. They died, as all things do, and rained down through the depths like gentle snow. It never stops. Even now, invisible flakes drift down from above, organic particles, bits of dust, a constant soft sifting. It is called marine snow, and it falls all year, all over the world, slow, gentle, endless. You press your hand deeper into the seabed. Layers unfold, one after the other. 1,000 years in a few centimeters, 1,000,000 in a meter. Each layer tells a quiet truth. A time when the waters were warmer, when ice held more of the world, when something bloomed or vanished or changed in a way too slow for humans to notice until it was already done. You're lying on a book written in silt. A book with no punctuation, no author, no conclusion. But if you listen, not with ears, but with presence, the stories rise. Here is a spiral shell, half buried, the shape of a Fibonacci dream. It once belonged to an ammonite, a creature that lived hundreds of millions of years ago when the continents were closer and coral reefs grew in places now locked in ice. The ammonite floated in warm, shallow seas, using its coiled shell to balance, to rise and fall with the currents. Now it sleeps in stone. Its cousins, the nautiluses, still swim in the Pacific today. Their white and amber shells a living echo. You imagine them drifting past ancient volcanoes, unaware that their spiral shape once impressed itself into stone. And there, near a crack in the seabed, you find the trace of something softer, a jellyfish fossil. Delicate, ghost-like. It seems impossible. How can something so insubstantial leave a mark that endures for millions of years? But it has. Sometimes, when the ocean's chemistry shifts just so, the seabed preserves even the softest things, like a pressed flower held in place by time. These fossils remind you that nothing is too delicate to be remembered. Not even the nearly invisible flicker of a jellyfish. You lie still, and the sea tells you of other things it has kept. The bones of whales layered with silt. The teeth of sharks, falling for generations like scattered stars. The pollen of long-dead forests, carried by wind, washed by rivers, and sunk into silence. In certain parts of the ocean, scientists have extracted core samples from the seafloor. Long cylinders of compacted sediment pulled from hundreds of feet below. When they cut them open, they see bands, like the rings of trees, but older, much older. Each band tells of temperature, of rainfall, of volcanic ash, of iron from deserts, of plankton blooms, of life rising and falling and rising again. A layer of dark clay might signal an extinction, a layer of white chalk, a time of abundant light and calcium, when tiny creatures filled the sea and fell in snow. These are not just marks of the past. They are records of change. The ocean remembers when the dinosaurs vanished. It remembers the shifting of poles, the opening of straits, the silence that followed asteroid impacts, the warming and cooling of epochs. It remembers the scent of the first trees, the birth of algae, the breath of the first photosynthetic bacteria that once colored the ocean rust red with iron. Everything that has ever touched the sea leaves a trace. Even now, a single grain of sediment may contain remnants of human life. Soot from factories, plastic fibers from clothing, radioactive isotopes from bomb tests, fragments of metal, ink, carbon. The fossil record is no longer just bones and shells. It is stories of us too. You run your fingers through the sediment and think about that. You, sitting here now, floating in thought, are not apart from this memory. You are within it, made of water and mineral, of calcium that once belonged to coral reefs, of iron that traveled from supernovae to ocean to blood. You are part of this remembering, whether you speak or not. And the sea? The sea keeps no grudges, no praise. It only records, patiently, silently, completely. You wonder briefly what stories the ocean is storing today, ones we won't understand for 1,000 years. Will someone read these layers and find a time when the world warmed too quickly, when species vanished, when the snow of the ocean turned sparse? Or perhaps they will read of something else, a time when we listened, when we slowed, when we remembered the sea not as endless, but as ancient. Because to float here is to feel time differently, not as a line, but as a spiral, not as a clock, but as a landscape, layered, vast, folded. Above you, the sunlit waves still move. But here, on the floor of the ocean, time has shape. It has weight. It presses gently into stone. The past is not gone. It is resting. And as you rise once more, slowly, gently, one final thought drifts up with you, as quiet as silt. If the sea remembers even the softest creatures, what might the stars be holding, above, beyond, in the dust that never falls? You rise gently now from the ocean's slow depths. The pressure lightens. The cold softens. Light, dim and blue, begins to return. First as a faint shimmer, then as a veil stretched above you. You're entering a world between surface and dark, a world of drifting lives, of endless motion, of breath. And in this world, you meet the plankton. They are small, smaller than your eye can follow, but they are many, more than stars, more than sand, a galaxy of lives suspended in water, blinking and bobbing in a current too vast to measure. Some are animals, some are plants, some are somewhere in between, but all of them, keep time. You hover, and the water around you begins to glow. Here in the twilight, plankton shimmer. Some produce their own light, bioluminescence, a cool blue-green flicker like the hush of a firefly. Others reflect what sunlight still filters down, their transparent bodies catching light like prisms in a dream. You are inside a living sky, and these glowing, floating creatures, they are not still, they move. Every day, at dawn and dusk, they rise and fall in the greatest migration on Earth. It is called the Deal vertical migration, a daily movement of plankton and other small organisms from the deep to the surface and back again. As night falls, they rise toward the lightless surface to feed. As dawn nears, they retreat to darker depths to hide. Billions of tiny lives moving in unison. Upward, downward, a global breath. You breathe with them now, in, outside. As they rise, so do you. They are driven not by choice, but by light, the fading and returning of day. They have no clocks, no calendars, but their bodies know. Light touches their pigments, their receptors, and the cue is clear. It is time to move. This migration is older than language, older than birdsong, older than coral reefs. It began when light first met life, and even now in the age of satellites and submarines it continues, unseen from shore, but felt across the planet. Because plankton are not just passengers of the sea, they shape it. You drift through a cloud of phytoplankton, microscopic plants floating freely, turning sunlight into oxygen. With every breath you take, you share something with them. These green specks, scattered like stars, produce more than half the world's oxygen, more than all the forests and grasslands combined. The air you breathe was once part of this drifting field. You open your lungs and the ocean opens with you. And nearby, zooplankton follow. Animal plankton, feeding on phytoplankton, glowing, flickering, swirling. Some are baby fish, not yet shaped. Some are transparent crustaceans, their eyes like drops of ink. Some are larval jellyfish, trembling like ghosts. They feed, they flee, they rise and fall, all to the same rhythm. It is not random. It is a tide of light and dark. A breath not of lungs, but of movement. From space, the ocean's surface looks calm. But beneath it, the daily migration of plankton is so vast, it alters how sonar travels through water. At dusk, the sea becomes denser with life. At dawn, it thins again. It is a pulse, of feeding, of fleeing, of returning. You feel it now. The sea inhales, plankton rise. The sea exhales, plankton fall. And this breath moves energy through the ocean. When they rise, plankton feed on sunlight and on each other. When they fall, they carry carbon and nutrients down with them, feeding the deep. This is the ocean's quiet exchange, its way of cycling life from surface to abyss and back. Even in their smallness, they are powerful. Some blooms of phytoplankton can be seen from orbit, vast green spirals stretching for miles, twisting through currents like fingerprints of life. Others stay hidden, deep and glowing, invisible but constant. They form the base of the food chain, the beginning of everything that swims. Without them, there would be no fish, no whales, no coral, no breath. And yet they move with such softness, such lightness. You might miss them entirely if you didn't know how to look. You float now in their company, quiet, weightless. The water is thick with stars that are not stars, light that is not fire. You let yourself drift with them as they rise once more into the coming night. Somewhere above, the moon has begun to rise. It too plays a role in this movement. Its gentle tug not only shaping tides, but influencing how light reflects on the water, how deep it reaches, how quickly it fades. The moon and the sun, twin signals to these tiny beings. The changing light tells them when to move, and they listen. Always. You wonder what it means to be that tuned in, to follow light with no question, to rise when it fades, to rest when it returns. And you wonder too, how much more the ocean carries that we cannot see. Live so small they slip through our notice, yet vast enough to oxygenate a planet. You breathe again, deep, grateful. The light of plankton still dances around you, a field of living timekeepers, pulsing with the rhythm of day and night. And as you drift toward the surface, the horizon just beginning to glow, one thought flickers with you. If creatures this small can rise to greet the moon, what might the sun awaken next? You cup the ocean in your hands now, just a small shape, curved and cradling. Water spills through your fingers. But what slips away is not empty. It is full. So full, in fact, that if you knew how to listen to it, molecule by molecule, it would tell you the story of Earth. A story told in chemistry, in atoms, in drift. Because every drop of seawater is more than just H2O. It is memory made liquid. It is dust dissolved, minerals mingled, light reflected. It is the remains of volcanoes, of raindrops, of ancient rivers, of mountains worn into whispers, and none of it is lost. You begin with the salt. It's the most familiar, the most felt, on your lips, on your skin, in the slow sting of a cut. Ocean water is about 3.5% salt, but that salt isn't just sodium chloride. It's a symphony. Magnesium, calcium, potassium, sulfate, bicarbonate. Each dissolved from rock, carried by rivers, released by vents on the seafloor. Each molecule has traveled. And the ocean keeps it, not like a vault, but like a library. It blends and balances. But if you look closely enough, you can still tell where the salt came from. Was it from volcanic rock? From limestone? From the rain? Each source leaves a trace. You let the water roll across your palm. In it, you can taste the fingerprints of continents. Scientists call this salinity, a measure of how salty the water is. But more than that, it is a climate clock. Salt levels change when ice melts, when evaporation increases, when rainfall rises or falls. Regions of higher salinity tell us about drought. Lower salinity tells us about flood. It's not just water, it's weather, dissolved. And then, deeper still, there are the isotopes. Tiny differences in atoms. Slight variations in weight, invisible but real. Some oxygen atoms are heavier than others. So are some hydrogen atoms. When water evaporates from the sea, the lighter isotopes tend to rise first, carried into clouds. When rain falls, those same isotopes settle again. And in that delicate balancing act of what leaves and what returns, scientists read the chemistry of climate. They measure isotope ratios in seawater to reconstruct rainfall patterns, temperature shifts, ocean currents from thousands, even millions of years ago. It is the ocean's breath, written in code. You picture it like a recipe passed down, one where the ingredients change ever so slightly depending on what year it was made, what season, what sky. And still, it can be read. You swirl the water gently and think about carbon. Some of it, dissolved in the ocean, has been there for centuries, some for millennia. Carbon dioxide from the atmosphere mixes into the sea, where it reacts with water to form carbonic acid. It's subtle, but important. This is part of the great exchange, the balancing act between air and sea, life and breath. And like all balances, it can shift. Too much carbon, and the chemistry changes. The ocean becomes more acidic. Shells dissolve faster. Coral struggles to grow. You can't see this from a boat, but you can see it in numbers, in samples, in the sigh of plankton who drift in more difficult water. The chemistry of drift is a quiet whisper, but it never lies. You sip it now, not with your mouth, but with your mind. Calcium from old coral, strontium from crustal rocks, silica from the skeletons of diatoms, iron from desert winds that crossed oceans and settled here in a single grain, nitrate from the breakdown of life, phosphate from the bones of fish long gone. You're not floating in water, you're floating in everything. Everything that's ever touched the ocean, stone, wind, fire, rain, eventually dissolves, reacts, transforms, and settles into drift. And drift, in turn, records it. A pale shimmer in a sample vial might tell of a volcanic eruption in the South Pacific 200 years ago. A spike in sulfur might trace back to a meteor impact 30 million years gone. A slight dip in oxygen-18 might reveal an ice age bloom frozen into chemistry. And still, the molecules move, not quickly, not in waves, but in slow, mixing currents. A molecule of water that evaporates near the equator may fall again over the Arctic. It may freeze into sea ice. It may melt centuries later and slide back into the conveyor of global ocean motion. It may mix with river water or deep sea brine, or rise again as vapor. Each phase, liquid, ice, vapor, each location, pole, equator, trench, leaves a chemical trace, a timestamp, a marker in the drift. You press your hand to the surface. It feels the same, always the same. But the chemistry beneath your skin is changing. You are touching atoms that once fed kelp, that once iced glaciers, that once lived in the body of a trilobite or traveled inside a whale. You are touching time, and it touches you back, because your own body, your breath, your warmth, your sweat, contains chemistry the ocean recognizes. You are not separate from the drift. You contribute to it. With every exhale, you return carbon. With every footprint, you shift salt. With every harvest, every fire, every storm, something changes, imperceptibly, but permanently. The sea takes it in. It does not forget. It just dissolves, disperses, dilutes, until the change becomes part of the background, part of the average, part of the record, like a soft sigh in a long, long song. You sit now with this knowing, with this softness. The ocean is not only made of water, it is made of time. It is made of memory small enough to dissolve, light enough to float, steady enough to last. Each molecule a story, each shift a sentence. It may not speak with words, but it writes in ratios, in ions, in the language of reaction. And as you drift with the thought, you begin to wonder, if even the chemistry of the sea remembers so much, what might lie beyond, where the water ends and the light of stars begins to fall like drift into the dark? You lie back now, weightless on the water's skin. Above you, the sky stretches open, dusk melting into night, stars appearing one by one like old friends returning without urgency. The sea cradles you gently, not asking where you've been, not asking where you're going. It moves beneath you as it always has, a pulse older than story. And you realize, the ocean does not need us to be remembered. It remembers anyway. It is the clock that never stops ticking, even when no one is listening. You think of all the instruments humans have made to track time. The sundial, casting a shadow. The hourglass, spilling sand. The wristwatch, ticking quietly in a boardroom. The atomic clock, splitting seconds to near perfection. And yet, even the most precise of them rely on what the sea already knew. That time is not a number, it is a rhythm. High tide, low tide, the moon waxing and waning, warm currents sweeping across continents, cold water sinking into the abyss, plankton rising and falling with the dusk, bones drifting down to rest in layers, waves tracing the shore, erasing footprints without judgment. The ocean is not rushed. It doesn't age in the way we do. It wears time like breath, in, out, in again. It carries glaciers, breaks them down, builds reefs, wears them smooth. It drifts continents apart, then pushes them back like tectonic lullabies. It remembers rain from epochs before names. It knows the shapes of vanished shores. And when we are gone, it will still be here, moving. Long after languages dissolve into forgotten symbols, long after cities collapse into overgrown silence, long after our numbers stop counting, the ocean will continue. It will rise to meet the moon. It will fall to whisper to the trenches. It will shift and sigh and hold the warmth of vanished suns. You feel that now, not fear, but comfort, because there is peace in knowing that something will continue. Something vast, patient, and alive, something that has always held time not with urgency, but with care. You float in that care. You think of the very first waves, when Earth was still forming, still cooling, still deciding how to be. Water found the low places. It began to move. It began to rise and fall, tugged by a moon that had only just joined the dance. No life, no witness, just rhythm, just memory beginning. And now, after all this time, you are here, floating on that same motion. You are not separate from it. You are of it. Your body is mostly water, salted like the sea. Your cells remember the quiet of tides. Your breath still mimics the movement. Inhale, exhale, like the plankton rising and falling. You carry the ocean with you, even on land, in sweat, in tears, in birth, in thought. And just as the ocean will continue, some part of you will too. Not in name, not in history, but in molecule, in drift. The water you've touched will touch others. It will rise into clouds, fall as rain, freeze as snow, melt again, return. The calcium in your bones may someday settle in the belly of the sea, pressed into a layer someone will read in 1,000 years. You will not be lost. You will become part of the long remembering. You think now of how much we try to capture time, in photos, in stories, in maps and digital archives. But the sea has no need for archives. It is the archive. Every current is a paragraph. Every tide is a line break. Every trench is a page turned so slowly, we forget we're reading. The ocean doesn't mark time. It holds it, and in its holding, it softens it. You feel that softening now, in your breath, in your spine, in the way your thoughts begin to loosen. The need to rush quiets. The need to define dissolves. There is only drift. There is only now. And even now is part of something wider. You remember too that the sea is not always gentle. It roars. It swallows. It changes coastlines and claims ships. But even in that fury, there is rhythm. There is reason. There is the long arc of motion that cares nothing for chaos, only for continuation. You rest in that continuation. Somewhere beneath you, deep currents move like ancient thoughts, slowly circling the planet. They've done this for thousands of years. They will do it for thousands more. The same water, the same journey. Over and over, like a whispered poem that never ends. And the stars begin to reflect on the surface, a mirror of space above and sea below. One vast rhythm, one breathing thing. You close your eyes and you feel it, the earth turning, the moon pulling, the tides reaching, the ocean remembering, and you, still and present, floating in the middle of it all. Time doesn't need to be measured tonight. It only needs to be felt. You let the thought move through you, that even when all clocks stop, even when our stories end, the ocean will still rise, fall, and rise again. And in that motion, something of us will always remain, 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 will always